On this week's Gridiron Report, we have the Pistons season finally coming to an end, and it's all brought to you by Pins and Aces, our favorite spot for all your golf apparel needs. Use promo code GRIT for 21% off any product at pinsandaces.com. Let's get into it.
In the heart of the city where the lights grow dim, grit and grind every inch, every rim. From the underdogs rising to the legends that win. It's the grit iron report, let the games begin. Every highlight's a journey, roads paved with fire, sweat, tears, and hustle that never expire. From the rookies on the rise to the old hands retire. Grit iron is the place for fans to conspire. Hustle on blast, beats thundering loud. Champions are born from the roar of the crowd. The Gridiron Report, where the
Welcome to the Gridiron Report, your Lions First All Detroit Sports podcast presented by Mic Drop Studios. Today is Wednesday, May 20th, and the Detroit Pistons, although they brought this series back to Detroit, their season is officially over. We're not going to break down the whole season, but just remember the 13-game winning streak going back to October and September and into November. Cade Cunningham taking the step to an All-NBA player, Jalen Duren becoming a first-time All-Star, Asar Thompson becoming just an absolute pest on the perimeter. The 2025 season is officially over. We're not going to break down the whole season, but we do have some actual playoff games to break into here tonight.
Man, yeah, it's tough. You nailed it, man. Fun season. Yeah, I am pumped. Next week, we are absolutely going to break down the entire season, what went well, what didn't, and then probably more important than anything else, like where do the Pistons go? Is it all doom and gloom? Is it not? We're going to break that all down next episode, next week. But yeah, this week, man, games 5 through 7, a lot of heartbreak, a lot of ups and downs, definitely some elation and great emotions as well. But let's start with game 5, man, because this one just about ripped my heart out. Like, I know the series wasn't over after game 5, obviously, but we knew the implications of, the winner of a 2-2 series, a tied series, the winner of game 5 and what that does. And obviously that came to fruition. But yeah, game 5, Cleveland Cavaliers 117, Detroit Pistons 113, final in overtime. Oh my God. We'll break down the whole game, but like, I cannot believe that we coughed up that game. And like, I swear to God, and I texted this to like my friends. I'm like, it was like an hour and a half after the game, and I'm like, I have not like found the courage to get off the couch. Like I am still on the couch and still like I couldn't believe what I saw in like the biggest game of the season to date. You cough up a 9-point lead down the stretch, but overall, like, there was a lot of good from game 5. Like it's in my view, it was a must-have. It was at home, and you find yourself down in the third quarter and thinking, probably, all hell's about to break loose. And I did like, what the Pistons did to fight back, and a lot of it was because of Cade Cunningham. Like, he was outstanding in Game 5. 39 points, 7 boards, 9 assists. Shot almost 50% from the field and 60% from 3. He just was doing a little bit of everything. It's exactly what you need your superstar to do. He's not only facilitating, but he's also scoring at a really high clip. Thought his defense was tremendous in Game 5. I wanna just absolutely highlight that, Cade has not necessarily been perfect, and we'll talk about Game 7, but like, I thought that Game 5 Cade was spectacular, and that was a big eye-opening thing for me, is like, okay, he obviously cannot do it on his own, and like, the supporting cast, I think, definitely let him down in Game 5.
13 for 27. He ended up going 6 for 10 from three-point range, which was something that was actually a pretty good storyline, obviously outside of Game 7, like you mentioned. We'll get to that here shortly. But he was really efficient from the three-point line as well. Just 7 for 8 from the line, which was kind of the story of Cade's life, right? Or at least Cade's career here in Detroit, just not being able to get to the line. This game, if you're Detroit, you did, like, obviously we had third quarter woes, so the Detroit Pistons were outscored in the third quarter 20-32, which we've seen time and time again throughout this entire series, that we're either down in the first half and we kind of start slow, but we kind of crawl our way back to start the second half, or to end the first half, and then they come out just so sluggish in the second half. I mean, that's kind of, we didn't start slow. We actually started pretty decent, and I think we had a lead going into halftime, and then just got the third quarter and just got absolutely blown out. And then, like you said, just coughing up it's one of those things that, like, you just kind of see it slowly happening, and you have Max Strus hitting like a 3. He was 6 for 8 from 3-point range. Like, you just slowly saw James Harden caught heat, from deep, and as the last final 2 minutes, and it's just one of those things where like you're just sitting on the couch and you know what's happening and you're just like, this can't, like there's no way this can continue, like this isn't actually happening, right? And then it just slowly does, and it seems we just like almost peaked and like finished the game 3 minutes too early. Like it was like the 4 or 5 minute mark, and we took we had like a 2 or 3 point lead. We ballooned that, like you said, up to like 9 or something, and then we just kind of like, okay, if the game was ending right there, we would have been perfect. But unfortunately, there's still 2 minutes left, and I don't think we hit like another field goal to finish the game. I know Tobias Harris has missed a few open ones. Daniel Jenkins missed some, and they obviously then had the last punch to send it to overtime. James Harden was fantastic. Like I said, 30 points, just 3 for 10 from 3-point range. So he was getting it done basically everywhere else, including the free throw line. Just another masterclass of James Harden, absolutely flopping. And then Donovan Mitchell, a decent game. Donovan Mitchell really wasn't up and down the last few games. He went nuclear a few games, but then he also at the same time had some kind of duds. Really in between here with 21 points. But again, similar to James Harden being 3 for 10 from 3, Donovan Mitchell was just 1 for 8. So like they weren't getting it done. Their starters weren't getting it done from the 3-point range. Really where it all came was Max Strus on the bench with 20 points, 6 for 8, like I said, from 3. And he was the only bench player to do anything. You had Dennis Schroeder, who had 5, Morrell, who had 6, and Tyson, who the game for like 3 minutes, so it doesn't really matter. He had 0. So really, Max Strus was the only one doing anything from the 3-point range. But it just made it happen, as the game was ending. And it was just kind of one of the things that you saw slowly happen. We obviously need to talk a little bit about the final minute, the foul, non-foul. I want to back up right before that, though. Like that defense Asar played on Donovan Mitchell to cleanly swipe the ball. And I saw some people, it wasn't a lot of people, but there were definitely some people online that were saying, like, well, this shouldn't even gotten that far, the foul, non-foul, and Jared Allen, because Asar Thompson fouled Donovan Mitchell. And now, if you watch it, like it was very clean. It was methodical. It was under control. He stripped it perfectly. And regardless whether Jared Allen fouled Asar and tripped him, there was like a 0.5 seconds left on the clock when the ball bounced out of bounds, or around there. So it should have been something at the very least, let alone a foul with a tie ball game with a chance to do something. So. I don't know. It's hard. It was hard in a series like this in which we continuously saw James Harden flop and Donovan Mitchell, get calls go his way, and a bunch of free throw disparities. It was hard to see a game like that just be put in the ref's hands and just blatantly miss a call. I mean, like, we shouldn't have been in that position in the first place. The final 2 minutes, like we had that locked up and we coughed it up. But damn it, that was so fucking frustrating to see. Like nothing happened from that.
Yeah, dude. Like the refs were clearly like just clock watching and like seeing like, okay, is there. Like we're just waiting for it to go to overtime, basically. As soon as Cleveland had, obviously at the last shot didn't go in, and then of course everything that just unfolded after that you just walked us through. The refs were clock watching. There was no way they were going to blow the whistle again after that point. They had already made up their minds. So anything that happened after it happened, and it's super unfortunate. I'm probably not going to play the ref card in this scenario just because you didn't make a shot in the last 2 minutes and you completely puckered up. And yeah. You said it perfectly. Like you're sitting there on the couch watching, like, oh fuck, is this really gonna happen? Like 9-point lead turns into 6-point lead, and then a 4-point lead, and you're like, all right, you just need one more basket, like one basket, or quite literally one free throw down the stretch in the last 2 minutes would have gotten the job done. And the Pistons couldn't do it. That really sucked. It was an awful collapse. In my heart of hearts, like going to overtime, there's just absolutely no way we were winning that game. We had lost all momentum. Our offense completely forgot how to play basketball. Like I was like, we might not score at all in overtime. Ended up scoring like 10 points, but clearly wasn't enough. It was all in all really, really bad collapse. And probably just one more thing. We haven't really talked about it yet, but this was extremely, extremely alarming. In Game 5, Jalen Duren just completely benched. He was horrible. Basically running cardio, 9 points, 5 boards. He was getting out-rebounded left and right to the point where, like, you couldn't even keep him in the game. JB had no choice but to bench him. Your all-star center, 22 years old. I thought that really sucked. B-Ball Paul comes in, really good minutes, 8 boards. To have 3 more boards than Jalen Duren did the entire game, I thought huge testament to Paul Reed, just his hustle in his grittiness. So yeah, 10 points, 8 boards, and an assist for Paul Reed. Just coming in there being the spark plug. Kind of, a big reason why we were able to get that lead up to 9, and we know what happened after that. But obviously, Jalen Duren, we'll talk about Game 6. He bounced back, but all in all, man, just Game 5 was super alarming for me if I'm looking at Jalen Duren's performance.
Like you said, it was at home. The statistics say winner of Game 5, like you mentioned to start the segment, oftentimes, more often than not, goes on to win the series. Like, this was the game to win. And outside of, you had Dennis Jenkins inserted in the starting lineup because you had no Duncan Robinson. He was out with his back soreness. We'll touch on Duncan Robinson, his future with Detroit, in probably next week's episode. We get Dennis Jenkins subbed into the starting lineup, and he played really, really well. He's only 2 for 8 from 3-point range, which is not great, but he still finished with 19 points. Like, he had finished with a -9 on the plus minus, and I said on here before, I don't necessarily subscribe to the plus minuses based on who you're playing around and any runs or anything like that. But like, you had everything, a lot of things. I don't want to say everything, a lot of things going your way. This was the first game, I think, really all series that Tobias Harris didn't score over 20. Oh no, he had 16 the game before this, so this was the beginning of his coming back down to earth party. But like, other than that, you had a really good, I thought, a pretty good turnout from the entire team. Around, you only had 6 from Asar Thompson. Probably would have hoped for a little more there. But like, you had 10 from Paul Reed, like you mentioned, 8 from Isaiah Stewart, who was 2 for 3 from 3-point range. Karis LeVert got into it. Marcus Sasser got some minutes there, 16 minutes. He wasn't really effective in this game. He was obviously much better in Game 6 and 7. But other than Jalen Duren, you just needed a little bit more from him, and then maybe you can pull this away. Then obviously, like you said, we end up losing on our home turf, and then we had to go back to Cleveland, in which I was extremely nervous. I think everyone was nervous for, right?
When you cough up a Game 5 like that, you've already lost all momentum. Losing games 3 and 4, you're at home, cough up Game 5. I'm like this, like bury us now. The season absolutely over. There's no way we get out of bed and show up for Game 6 in Cleveland. Cleveland's going to close us out. Like, I swear I was not alone in that sentiment. Like, I'm pretty sure everyone probably thought that. And lo and behold, Pistons. I mean, they absolutely proved me wrong. Maybe eat my words. Game 6, Pistons 115, Cavs 94. This was a wire-to-wire, belt-to-ass, where, Detroit, we were never down. Led every quarter, dominated every quarter. The third quarter was just a decisive stretch, outscoring the Cavs 30-9. A little bit of everything, and the guy who I just dogged on in Game 5 and probably all throughout these playoffs, Jalen Duren, he did show up, and he had his best game. He was really fantastic. Points, 11 rebounds, 70% from the field, and plus-minus a +9. I just thought he was very effective, like getting to his spot. A couple really nice spin moves in the paint. Just really what he couldn't do all playoffs was score in the paint, and he did that really well in Game 6. So I don't want to just straight up dog on the kid, the 22-year-old. I thought he had a great game, but overall, I mean, just everyone top to bottom, man. Like no one scored over 21. I think Cade was our leading scorer with 21, but B-Ball Paul, legacy game for Paul Reed, 17 points, 6 boards. He had Dennis with 15, Duncan with 14. He comes back, and from that back injury, plays really well. Asar had 10, just top to bottom. Like, I mean, the boys were scoring. The bench points were absolutely there. 3-point was great. I thought that, I mean, this team, the team that showed up in Game 6, I'm like, holy shit, we could actually do this thing. I was pretty pumped.
There definitely is 2 different teams that were here in Detroit, and I don't know what the catalyst is in deciding what team you're going to get. This was a team that won a lot of games. The regular season. This was a team that showed up in Game 7 against Orlando, and Game 1 and Game 2 against Cleveland, and then they went silent. They went dead for 3, 4, 5, and then they came back for Game 6 in a game that, I mean, like you said, I think I texted the guys and we're like, hey, I am mentally ready for the season to be over tonight. And lo and behold, it wasn't. I have no idea what sparks them to. That's what's frustrating about it. Like Jalen Duren, like you said, Jalen Duren, 15 points on just 27 minutes, so his minutes were down a little bit just because, like you said, he got benched the game before. He had to, kind of work his way back into it. 15 points, 11 rebounds. His feet were fast. He was putting the ball on the deck with confidence. He was moving around. His post moves were great. Like, this was the Jalen Duren that was named to an all-star team. And it makes no sense as to, like, he just woke. Did he sleep better that night? Did he have a better dinner before the game? I don't know what ended up going on with him, but it obviously works. Like you said, everyone very much, and that's what, like I said, for Games 1 and Games 2, we saw Cade Cunningham only have 23 points in those first 2 games, and you saw just a very level spread success rate, across the board for us, and that's the same thing we saw here. A little bit concerning. Tobias only had 6 points. Again, starting in Game 5, you saw him start to come back. Actually, probably starting in Game 4, you started to see him come back down to earth. He had 16 points first game in, I think 8 games. After 8 games in a row, scoring 20+. The first game, he wasn't. He didn't score 20 at 16. And then Game 5, what I say, he only had like 12, and then obviously Game 6 he finished with 6. So that was a huge point when we get to Game 7 that we really struggled in Game 7, but you kind of saw that the wear and tear start to appear on Uncle T there, the oldest Piston on a roster, I think at 33 years old. So you saw a little bit there. Paul Reed, fantastic. I mean, Paul Reed, and as we jump into where we go from here into next season and moves we have to make, like, I don't want to lose Paul Reed. We don't want to get into too much of it, but Paul Reed, in the regular season, he was kind of a fun story to throw in, and like, you don't know what you're going to get with Paul Reed. You just like strap in and pray that you don't fall off during the ride, because Paul Reed's going to be up and down all over the place. But like, he was doing that, but he actually was being so, like, he saved this game. And granted, this game never, like you said, is wire to wire, never really was in doubt. But like, Paul Reed coming in this game, like, he was a major reason as to why we were able to do this. So like, Paul Reed definitely in my opinion, played himself into next season. Everyone looked really good across the board.
Dude, how old do you think B-Ball Paul is?
So he's one of those guys that, like, maybe it's the way that he came on the scene in Philly that, like, because I want to say he was undrafted or second round. I don't know when he wasn't a high draft pick. And so I want to say he's only in like his 6th season. So B-Ball Paul has to be no more than 26.
Nailed it. He is exactly 26, and he was drafted 58th overall, so late second round.
Barely in the draft. Yeah.
Exactly, barely. Almost Mr. Irrelevant. Well, you nailed that. I know. I just look at a guy like B-Ball Paul, and he looks like he's about 50. And so yeah, I was very surprised when I saw 26 years old. But you're exactly right, man. He was tremendous. Marcus Sasser, best game for him. Maybe in a Pistons, certainly playoff Pistons.
Yeah.
Certainly the best game for him. Yeah, 50% from 3, 80%. Yeah, he damn near didn't miss from the field. He was awesome. You mentioned Asar Thompson. You mentioned he's been a little bit up and down from a defensive standpoint. One thing that I loved Game 6, Asar just locking down Donovan Mitchell. Mitchell 6 for 20 from the field, minus 25. In plus minus. Asar had 4 steals, 9 boards. It seemed like he was on every single Donovan Mitchell jump shot, 3-point shot, whatever. Asar was there. And like, it's not like he's just kind of floated it in. Like, he is absolutely like leaping as high as he can and really contesting these shots. So I know he's been a little bit up and down in his performance overall, but like, his defense through and through in these playoffs has been almost spectacular. I mean, at times absolutely spectacular, and it definitely was in Game 6. That's exactly what we are begging for out of Asar. And like, whenever he does go cold from a defensive standpoint, we really feel it. Like, you feel it. Like, holy shit, we can't stop anyone. And the majority of the time when Asar is on, his defense is just insane. So yeah, I wanted to absolutely give him his flowers there too.
He had 5 stocks, which is crazy. Stocks obviously steals and blocks. This was a game that he fouled out in, right? They're starting to all run together. They fouled out in this one. So you just reminded me that like he was able to be so successful defensively while also just getting an absolutely terrible whistle. You had the foul that was I don't know what you want to call it. It was a screen that was. I first, when I saw it, I didn't think it was that bad. He was kind of fighting through a moving screen on Sam Merrill. They ended up they reviewed it and basically said that the hand made its way up to Sam Merrill's neck.
Yeah.
I watched it multiple times. I really didn't see it that much.
I didn't either at all. Like, I thought it was just you just fighting through a screen. Like, it's a foul. They called it flagrant because there was, I guess, some contact to the neck. I didn't see it at all.
Same. So I didn't see, but when the announcer was like, "Oh yeah, there's the hand to the neck," like this is gonna be, obviously gonna be flagrant, no more, no less. So maybe it was obvious to an angle they were seeing. I didn't see it. After that moment, he got terrible whistles from the referees, and this is obviously on the heels of the no call to finish Game 5. He had the fouls 4, 5, and 6. Like, Asar, it's no secret. Like, Asar is an absolute menace on defense. It's also no secret that sometimes Asar needs to be smarter on how aggressive he is in different times on defense. He has a lot of questionable defense. Like, why would you reach in there? And you're being called right now. Why would you reach in? And that's just like a dumb foul, and you need all your fouls because we need you on the court, and you're always flirting with fouling out from being aggressive and obviously going up against the number 1 players on the other team, and those are often the guys who draw the fouls and stuff. So he has a tendency to attract fouls that are probably not great. fouls 4 and 5 for him were horrendous. The I think it was the sixth foul, or maybe it was the fifth foul, that him and Jared Allen were just running up the court. Jared Allen kind of bumped into him, so naturally Asar kind of just bumped him back. It literally was just two guys like running down the court, and they called the foul at half court, and it was, I think that was his fifth. Like, that was embarrassing to make a call like that. Even like Dwayne Wade, who's the announcer for, I think it was on Peacock or whatever it was like, oh man, I mean, that's just terrible. Like, you cannot call that. Like, in a playoff game, in a potential, in an elimination game, you cannot call that away from the basket. It was embarrassing for me. Like, and I know you said you don't want to pull the ref card from Game 5, like, and we ended up winning this game handedly. But if it was closer and we didn't have Asar because of some of those calls he was getting after the flagrant one, like, it was embarrassing as a referee group in that game.
Oh yeah, dude. When I say like I don't want to play the ref card, I was just talking about like the very final like no whistle in the last 1 second of Game 5. But overall in this series, like, I think we're well within our rights to say like, yeah, the Pistons probably shouldn't have won anyways, because you cough up Game 5 like that, you play really bad for like 3 straight games in a row. Game 7 was awful, but like in general, the refs were also relatively ass. Like they just, I mean, the whistle discrepancy, like it's just there. Like in any one game, you could say like, okay, yeah, it's game script, whatever. Like maybe Cleveland's just doing a better job getting to the line, things like that. But we have a 7-game sample of it, and it was just an absolute whistle discrepancy. So yeah, I'm certainly going to call that. I mean, it's not the reason why we lost this series. We lost it because, frankly, all of our starters went cold, like for multiple games, and like when your starters get outscored by your bench, like you're absolutely losing the game. So Cade, like he did have turnovers, 7 turnovers, which is still a problem. He's had to the team has turnovers. It's certainly a team issue, turnovers this series, last series, but still 8 assists, 21 points. I thought he did just a good job of managing this game. But for me, Duren, Asar, B-Ball Paul, all having their best game in a do-or-die elimination on the road, Game 6 environment, and really just the bench just in general, popping off for 48 points. Like, I thought that was tremendous.
Yeah, I think that our bench vastly outscored. Our bench also was vastly deeper than. Well, actually, now that I'm looking at it, I should look at this. I mean, okay, this makes sense. I was just like, oh, we got a lot of guys from the bench in this game. Like, that's crazy. We went this deep, and I'm just now noticing and realizing that it was well into. I think there was like 3 minutes left, and Cleveland kind of raised the flag and said that we'll take this to Game 7, put in their reserves, and we obviously did the same thing. So Chaz Lanier got a minute to get in there. Ron Holland with 2 minutes in garbage time. Interesting enough, Isaiah Stewart was just 4 minutes. We'll get to him. Very, very interesting, big discussion there, I think, in next week's episode on what we do with Isaiah Stewart. But he just 4 minutes. I don't know when those 4 minutes end up coming. But then Tolu Smith with 1 appearance, 0 minutes, so he got in with less than a minute left. So both benches. The last thing I'll say before we jump to Game 7, third quarter. Like, I'm looking at Games 5, 6, and 7 because obviously those are the games we're talking about here. So I don't have 1, 2, and 3 in front of me. But I almost guarantee they follow the same pattern that the team who wins the third quarter won the game. In Games 5, 6, and 7, the team that won the third quarter went on to win those games, and they usually were about by 10 points. So this game, Detroit had 30 in the third quarter, Cleveland only 19. It's something that, like, that is very much, hey, let's go in the locker room. What's working for us this first half? What's not working for us? What's working for them? What do we need to focus our attention on defensively? How do we get out ahead of them? It's those coaching decisions and updates that really seem to have won games in this series. And that's something that JB Bickerstaff really struggled and has struggled with his entire career. It's one reason why he didn't really work out in Cleveland. He lost the locker room there. And moving into Game 7, I mean, the same pattern happened in Game 7. Detroit was vastly outscored in the third quarter, 35-26.
Every quarter, though.
But that doesn't fit my narrative. Only third quarter, though.
Yeah. No, I think it's a great narrative that did. I think it came to fruition Games 1 through 6. But yeah, in Game 7, like, Pistons just getting outscored every single quarter when it matters most, man. When you're at home and the crowd just is there for you. I mean, at least to start the game, and you have like a sick pump up speech, whatever, mashup, and I'm just like sitting at home thinking like, holy shit, like, let's go. I'm so pumped for this game. I'm pumped for these boys. And lo and behold, Cavs 125, Pistons 94. Really was never a game ever. Like maybe like halfway through the first, we're thinking, all right, keep this close, just first quarter, whatever. And then, yeah, you get outscored by 8 in the second quarter. Third quarter is just a disaster. And the game is over at that point. Fourth quarter, no better. Even in garbage time, you can't even beat this team. So, Detroit's biggest lead was 1. It lasted like a microsecond. Cleveland's biggest lead, 35. And it's embarrassing, man. On your home floor, you lose 2 games at home in this series. You lost, I think, at least 2 games at home in the previous series. You lost 2 games at home last year. I know that, against the Knicks. Like, I don't know what it is. Like, LCA, is it curse? Like, are these players like somehow more nervous to play at home because you're in front of your home crowd? I don't get it at all. But this has got to be like one of the most lopsided game 7s in like at least recent NBA history. Just an absolute ass kicking, top to bottom, and it sucks. The season's over, and again, we'll break down where the Pistons go from here in next week's episode. Super pumped to do that, but right now, like it stings, man. It just happened, a couple nights ago, and it's still probably not over it yet. Everyone sucked. Everyone across the board absolutely sucked. Cade 13. Duncan Robinson had 13. Duncan actually wasn't so bad. 60% from 3. Dennis was 17 points, but on just like 30% from the field, basically 33%. Everyone else absolutely atrocious. Asar 5 points. Jalen Duren 7. Tobias Harris 5 points. 0 made baskets. 5 points. Tobias Harris, which is probably going to be his last game in a Pistons uniform. Sad because he did have a great second. I don't know if you want to call it like second stint. I'll say second stint with the Pistons was overall great. He had a great playoffs, but he really went cold when it mattered most in the last 3 or 4 games against the Cavs. And it was across the board, man. Everyone sucked.
The only thing, I want to say one thing first and foremost in Detroit's favor, because they truly don't deserve any single sort of benefit of the doubt from this game. Like you said, this was an absolute embarrassing ass kicking. Like I was embarrassed watching this game. I had like secondhand embarrassment watching this game. And we had friends who were at the game, and I just felt bad for them. The only thing I'll say before I jump into all the negatives, the free throw discrepancy once again was very vastly in favor of the Cavs. And in the first half, I think that definitely did a number on Detroit. They ended up with 44 free throw opportunities as opposed to Detroit's 29. We were 22 for 29. That is crazy. And they were 28 for 44. I mean, just across the board, their starters, you had Jared Allen with 13 free throw attempts, Evan Mobley with 11, James Harden, who is the free throw merchant, he only had 8, so it really wasn't him. It was the guys down low. It was Jared Allen, it was Evan Mobley. Even Sam Merrill had a few. So, like, that's the only thing I want to say. Just another game, another game against the Cavs in which the free throws were vastly different after the first game, in which Donovan Mitchell thought maybe he got fouled a little bit, came out and cried about it, and we knew that the rest were probably going to react in a certain way. I didn't expect it to last all series. But that's the only thing I'll say. Everything else about this game, I don't think LCA is cursed. I think this was just truly a combination of our inexperience. Granted, we did win a Game 7, we were 3 for 3 in elimination games coming into this game, but it back-to-back Game 7s, 14 games and very short rest against great teams. I think that's inexperience. I think that's also a combination of just the overall roster makeup. Like it bit us in the ass one final time, just not being everyone knew we were definitely overshooting our coverage with Tobias Harris being our bona fide number 2 scorer in the playoffs. Like, Tobias Harris didn't score back-to-back 20-point games in the regular season, and then he had 7 in a row in the playoffs, or 8 in a row in the playoffs. Like that, you knew eventually Waters going to find his level. So I think it was a combination of inexperience, a combination of like, this is really just the team and the roster that we put together. And unfortunately, when all that comes together in one game, you have just an absolute panting on live TV. Like you said, Tobias Harris 5 points, Jalen Duren 7 points with just one free throw. Cunningham with just 13 points, like 0 for 7 from 3. The super at 5 for 16 from the field. Asar from 5. Like Asar expected. Like Asar is not going to obviously score that much. I mean, you brought up Duncan Robinson. There was a point in this game where I was like, Duncan Robinson may will us back into this, at least making this a game. There was some 3-pointers in the second half that were deep 3-pointers, and I was like, well, shit. At least like he's still a magnet, ball magnet in the ball kind of thing. Karis LeVert, I thought, had another good game. I thought Duncan, Karis LeVert, and Dennis Jenkins were the only guys that actually had decent games, which is great to see those guys. And who knows what those guys are going to be, who they're going to be playing for next year. We'll go over all that next week. Just as a little preview, I disagree. I do not think Tobias Harris has played his last game in the for the Pistons. I think he loves it here. During his first stint here in Detroit years ago, he met his wife. They got married. She's from here. He wanted to come back here when he was done with the 76ers. His wife's family's from here. I think I don't know many other teams that, like, yeah, he had a great postseason, like I said, but I think everyone and their brother knew, like, okay, this is lightning in a bottle a little bit for Tobias, like turning the clock way back. I don't think any team's lining up to expecting to get that Tobias Harris moving forward. And so I think he's going to be very happy to kind of just ride his career out, hopefully coming off the bench next year on a lower salary. So, but we can get into that another time. But I mean, everyone not named Danis Jenkins, Duncan Robinson, Karis LeVert, and maybe Marcus Sasser even. Like, you could throw Karis and Marcus Sasser in the played okay level. Everyone else, just embarrassing. Like, we don't even deserve to be considered in an NBA team right now.
Yeah, dude. And and one side note too, just watching the Western Conference Finals right now, like both of those teams are just on an entirely different planet than anything that the Pistons or the Cavs or even the Knicks are on. So yeah, it was bound to happen eventually. We were gonna run into a team that just is so much better than us, and we're gonna get our asses kicked. But I don't think it was the case here. I mean, obviously the Cavs and the Pistons, I just think they stacked up really well. And of course, we went to Game 7, so it was close. But yeah, I want to give some credit to the Cavs real quick, because it was a masterclass. It really was. Like, obviously, this game was never close. Obviously, the Pistons played awful, but the Cavs also played very well. Evan Mobley had a fantastic series. I don't want to say it's tough to see him do that, because obviously we would so much rather have Cade. It's not even funny. They were in the same draft class. Is the only reason why I'm bringing that up. But Mobley was incredible. I mean, you could give the series MVP, not that it's a thing in this part of the playoffs, the semifinals, but I would probably give it to Evan Mobley even over Donovan Mitchell. He was a force to be reckoned with on offense and defense. But Game 7 for him, 21 points on an efficient 70% from the field, 12 boards, 6 assists, 2 blocks. He was plus minus 31. I just thought the Pistons had no answer for him. Like, it didn't matter who was down low. Like, Duren obviously struggled, and he was in foul trouble because of how physical Evan Mobley was. Jared Allen too, but we had zero answer. And the answer when it's not Jalen Duren, it wasn't really beef stew either, which you touched on a little bit. We'll talk about what happens with Isaiah Stewart. We'll talk about that next episode. But yeah, we had zero answer to Evan Mobley. I thought he was fantastic. And then you had the Max Strus legacy game in Game 5. Of course, this game it's going to be Sam Morril. Like, they really complement each other. I think they're, I don't know, in my view, very similar players. I'm not just saying that because they're both white, but 23 points off the bench for Sam Morril, 5 of 8 from 3. It's just, second straight game where we get torched by some rando coming off the bench. I think that does show that Cleveland's bench at times was certainly better than anything that we had, and especially the three-point shooting. Like, it was something that we touched out, and you called this really early. Like, early on in the season, you're like, yeah, I think last year's Pistons team is actually better than this year's Pistons team. And I shot it down time and time again, and you kept being persistent. Like, dude, look at the three-point shooting. Look at the flaws that this team has, even though they were winning a ton of games, and we know they won 60 games. And I think that we saw that. I mean, it just came to life in these playoffs. The Magic absolutely exploited our inability to spread the ball out at all. Like, when all we can do is, like, dribble drive and pick and roll, you just pack the paint, and we couldn't do anything. If you can't shoot the ball, you can't do anything in today's NBA. I think the Cavs did a pretty good job of exploiting that too, and in a different way than the Magic did, but still, like, their 3-point shooting and our inability to shoot the three at times, like, is absolutely the difference in this series. Probably should have been the difference in the last series against the Magic. We got a little bit of injury luck to Franz Wagner, and obviously pulled that out of our asses. But yeah, man, just again, don't want to talk too much about, like, where do the Pistons go from here, but, like, a lot of it has to do with 3-point shooting. Guarantee that.
So I want to get into Cleveland too, and, like, this series as a whole and the playoffs as a whole, because I have a lot of thoughts on what you just mentioned with the 3-point shooting, the build, how the Cavs team is built out, how Magic's, like, what things worked, what didn't. So I want to get into that, but before we do, let's go to a quick break, and then let's come back, and I want to touch on a lot of the stuff you just mentioned. Okay, we are back. So you were just mentioning the Cavs and just giving them their flowers for a second, which they absolutely deserve. I think looking back at this series as a whole, The Pistons, I feel like they punched the Cavs in the mouth a little bit. The Cavs are coming off of a series that like they really struggled against the Raptors, and a Raptors team that was really hurt, and they kind of just barely made it through. And so I think Cleveland was kind of all out of sorts, and Detroit definitely took advantage of that games 1 and games 2. Now, if they were the number 1 seed or a higher seed than us, and they had home court advantage, I don't know if we punched them in the mouth the same. Doesn't really matter. We go up 2-0, and I think just Cleveland's level balance, like you just mentioned, really started to prevail there. And that, like, they, as someone with OCD, like the build out of their team is so like refreshing, and it's so what's the word I'm looking for? Like it works so well. You have the 2 scoring all-stars in James Harden and Donovan Mitchell, the guys that you could at the end of the game. I honestly don't know who probably Donovan. But like you could have the ball in either one of their hands, and I'd be like, I'm worried. They could get a bucket in any which way. So you had the 2 guards. You have the 7-foot stretch guy. Like we saw Evan Mobley hit a few threes against us, so they had to bring our defense away from the paint. So you have this stretch big that is, like you said, very efficient, can rebound the ball. And then you also have just the classic sort of big man down low, Jared Allen. And I'll bring up Jared Allen again next week when we're talking about Jalen Duren, just because Jared Allen wasn't always who he is now. Like there was a point in time in his career which he was very much like Jalen Duren, and so you had that, and then on top of those 4, like the very good, solid, like in my opinion, a very like a championship contending formula for rotating through that last rotation spot is Max Strus, like you said, Dean Wade, Sam Morrell. Any one of those 3 guys can go out there and absolutely catch fire from 3, and we saw, like you said, each different game we saw one of those guys. We didn't really see it from Dean Wade. I don't really think he was really given the opportunity as the others. I think he's a better shooter than this series shown. But we had games, like you said, Max Strus was the one who torched us. We had games where Sam Morrell was the one who torched us. And so like that just rotating through that 5th spot of like, okay, who's got the hot hand tonight? They're pretty much all can do the same thing, but one of them will catch fire. That's just the shooters. One of them's going to catch fire. And if it's not, okay, well then, we'll get someone else in there that focuses more on defense or something. So like their build out of their team is so satisfying. And if I'm building out a championship team, I'm having those boxes as each player, and they check every single box. And so I think that they just have that. They have the championship build out of a team that I'm super jealous for. And again, we'll get into Detroit next week. That like when they check a box, that box is checked. They don't necessarily have like they have some weaknesses that like they need to build around. But like Detroit doesn't. Detroit kind of struggles in that like, yeah, this guy might check this box, but if we check that box, this box is going to be way unchecked because of his defensive limitations or his offensive limitations or his lack of rebounds. So I really tip of the cap to them. It was the first time Donovan Mitchell got past the second round. I feel kind of neutral about him and his performance. He was very up and down, whined to the refs a little bit. Wasn't necessarily a huge flopper. I think if it wasn't us playing against him, I probably would have no problem with the way he played. But just because we were going up against him, every little thing he did pissed me off. Obviously, James Harden's an absolute merchant. I want nothing but the worst for him. He's terrible for the game of basketball. But I mean, the Cavs series, shout out to them. We punched them in the mouth and they responded. Everyone said they weren't tough, and they taking it to Game 7, winning on our court is about as tough as it can get.
I like what you said. Like their makeup of their team, they have like at least 4 guys who can go nuclear from 3, and like we can't say that about the Pistons. Like maybe we have, I don't know, 2. Like I mean, you throw obviously Cade in there. Like he has gone nuclear from 3 in this series in 6 threes. You got Duncan, who obviously can do that. Defense is, a little bit more of a liability, but he is coming around for sure. He's a lot better than when he started his career on defense. But besides that, like who else do you have that can just go ludicrous? Like I don't really see it. Like yeah, maybe Dennis for a stretch, or Karis LeVert for a stretch, but those aren't guys that like they could pop off for 30. And you look at Donovan Mitchell and James Harden. Either of those can easily pop off for 30, and then probably to an extent like Max Strus and Sam Morrell, like more like 20, but still you don't really see that from too many guys at the Pistons. So yeah, it comes down to not only depth, but like what can those depth pieces do. And the Cavs, I think you said it brilliantly. They can do things that the Pistons can't do. We're more limited. So it comes back down to how your team is constructed. And I'm super pumped to next week just break down like exactly what the Pistons could and should do to really get over this hump, because we talk about windows and like, yeah, this is a very young team. One of maybe, I think it's the youngest team in the league still, or if not one of them, the Pistons are. And that window isn't going to be open forever. There's, of course, things that you can do. You got guys who are probably up for extensions that you got to decide, are we extending? Are we shipping them off? So yeah, I just want to prime for next week that I'm absolutely pumped to break that down further.
It's going to be fun. We'll break down the next few weeks here towards the end of the show. We have a really great next few weeks scheduled out. I have a few rapid-fire questions for you, just wrapping up the playoffs as a whole. So just give me your thoughts on it, and we can go into each one in more detail if you want. First and foremost, going back to the first round against Orlando, these are a lot of what ifs. Franz Wagner stays healthy. Do we make it out of the first round? Do we steal it still in Game 7 in pretty dominant fashion like we did? Or if Franz Wagner stays healthy, do they cut our playoff run short and we get our name in the history books as one of the only 1 seeds to lose to an 8 seed?
Yeah, dude, I think it's got to be the latter, man. Like, obviously, like, it's a shoulda, woulda, coulda. You know, he did get injured, but like, I just don't think the Magic blow that historic Game 6 collapse that they had. If you have Franz Wagner, like, they literally only needed like probably 2 or 3 baskets like down the stretch of the third and fourth quarter, and then they might win that game. And obviously didn't get that, and they went like a historic like 45 minutes of actual like human time without scoring a basket, which is impossible in the game of basketball. But yeah, if they have Franz Wagner, I think they win that game. Obviously, that means they would win the series. So a little bit of injury luck definitely went a long way to beat the Magic. And yeah, thank God we're not laughing stocks for losing to an 8 seed. That's all I got to say there.
Yeah, I that's the right answer. I don't really know of many people that are arguing against that, because I don't think that's a big secret. I'm not ashamed of it. Like, I mean, they were with Franz, they're a different team. Like we said, all that series, Franz was injured for most of the season, which is why they end up being an 8 seed. With a healthy Franz, they're a 3 seed at the very least. Like, they were final contenders, with Franz. So like, I'm not embarrassed to say that. I absolutely think we don't make it out of the first round with a healthy Franz. But like we said during that series, I'm not going to apologize for it. You play with who's in front of you. Question number 2, you alluded to it earlier. This team versus last year's team, best of 7, who wins it? Obviously, last year you had guys like Malik Beasley, Dennis Schroeder, Tim Hardaway, but you had Jalen Duren, who was still really trying to figure it out, was a defensive liability. Obviously, he kind of was in this postseason as well, but you had a less refined Jalen Duren. Cade Cunningham was obviously upped his game tremendously this year. You still had a Duncan Robinson this year. Who wins that game, best of 7, last year's Pistons team versus this year's Pistons team?
I think it probably is tight. It probably goes 7, but I still think it's this year's team, and only because you have a completely different Cade Cunningham. Like, yes, he was very good last year. Obviously, he was an all-star last year. Big reason why they had the turnaround from 2 years ago and made the playoffs. Give the Knicks a run for their money in the first round, but like he absolutely took another massive step forward this year. Starter, all-star, like he was just doing things that, quite frankly, he just couldn't do last year. He's just getting better and better, aging like fine wine. And it's not just Cade. You have Asar Thompson, who took a huge step forward defensively, and he's now just an absolute defensive freak that, he wasn't quite that player last year. Obviously, Malik Beasley, incredible. He's a better shooter than probably anyone that the Pistons have this year, but you have Duncan Robinson to offset that a little bit. Karis LeVert, I guess, kind of offsets Tim Hardaway, although I probably would have rather had Tim Hardaway, but it's really close. But probably the X factor for me, Jalen Duren taking that step forward, but then, of course, we saw he was pretty bad in the playoffs. So, yeah, I think it's close. I think it goes 7, but my gut still says that our young core took so much of a leap this year than the players they were last year that, like, our team this year wins.
Okay, I mean, yeah, those are all great points. It could go either way. It's really, last year's roster was better, but the strides for this year were tremendous. So it really, yeah, I mean, I agree exactly with what you said. Like, how much do you weigh those? I think I'm taking last year's team, and like you said, I mentioned it midway through the season. I just think that there was just more creation from last year, and as I'm kind of walking through this in my head, during the regular season, that very much was true, because you weren't getting very much out of guys like Karis LeVert, who was brought here Last minute they had to pivot from Malik Beasley to Karis LeVert, and so he brought here to kind of offset that a little bit. And you didn't get that during the regular season. I think you very much got that in the playoffs. I think Karis LeVert, especially the last 3 or 4 games, he was a walking 8 to 12 point option and was a reliable 3-point shooter. So I think that actually helped a little bit. Other than that, though, you really miss Malik Beasley. As I'm walking through this, maybe you're right, because then at the same time, Dennis Jenkins outplayed Dennis Schroeder this season or this series. So Dennis Jenkins outplayed. So maybe I'm walking that back. I was gonna say last year's Pistons team, but playoff wise, I think this playoff team beats that playoff team. There we go. Just flip my mind. You changed my mind.
Boom. That's how we do it. That's how we podcast, baby.
Okay, and then last question before we start to wrap up the show with Grid of the Week. Looking ahead, the New York Knicks are waiting now for the Cavaliers. New York Knicks coming off of a 4-game sweep of Philadelphia. Say we would have pulled this off in Game 7. The Knicks were waiting for us. A little bit of rest versus rust conversation. We beat up on the Knicks all season. Not that matters. In fact, that actually would scare me more going into this, because I feel like it's so hard to beat a team that many times in a row. They know when you really need to turn it on. Detroit versus the Knicks. Who wins that series? Who makes it to the finals on the Eastern side?
I think if you would have asked me when the playoffs started, I've been like, yeah, we're gonna kick the shit out of the Knicks. Like we quite literally beat the shit out of them in the regular season. I think by a combined 70 points in 3 games, whatever that was. But just the fact that they are playing so well right now, they're red hot right now. Jalen Brunson has been insane, and pair that with the fact that the Pistons are struggling. They've been so up and down, and you never really know which Pistons team is going to show up, which sucks, because in the regular season, you absolutely knew what Pistons team was going to show up. They were probably going to go belt to ass with you, and even if you are a contender, it's probably going to be a close game. That was absolutely not the case in the playoffs. There's a lot of fingers that you could be pointing, but the fact of the matter is, they just were so hot and cold, and I think for that reason, the Knicks are absolutely winning that hypothetical series. I think you probably keep it close just because you do have home court advantage as the 1 seed, but I think it's similar to last season. I think it's still Knicks in 6.
The only reason I would not agree with you is that just because I don't think the Knicks have played a defense like Detroit in the playoffs yet. Philly's defense is absolutely nothing that compares to Detroit. Boston's defense is non-existent. So the only reason I would say, Philly was going to beat Boston. Whoever the Knicks had to play before then, they haven't come across a defense like Detroit.
Atlanta. Yeah.
Oh, Atlanta. Yeah, and non-existent there as well. So that's the only reason, similar to the Cavs, maybe we could punch them in the mouth real quick with a defensive smothering game 1 or 2 or something like that with the home court advantage. It's the only reason I maybe would think that we'd have a real chance there. But like you said, they're red hot. I don't know how it ended up being. Probably a safe bet saying Knicks in 6. But okay, anything playoff wise before we wrap up the show with some Grid of the Week?
Just that, we're obviously really down on the boys right now, but overall, it was still a hell of a season. They won 60 games for the first time in 2 decades, and I have a lot of fond memories of this season that I'm really pumped to be able to break it down a little bit more on next week's episode. So I know we were pretty doom and gloom for this episode, obviously breaking down Games 5 and Game 7 that just happened on Sunday. It's probably bound to be a little doom and gloom, but just wanted to end on a little bit of a high note here that the boys still had a tremendous season, and I think the sky's still the limit for this team, and the window is still open. But there are changes that will be made, and we'll break that down in next week's episode.
Yeah, so just before we do get to Grit of the Week, a little bit peek behind the curtain. Like we mentioned, next week we're going to do our full exit interview for the Pistons, overall ranking of the season as a whole, areas we need to improve on, different guys we might target, how we're going to fill our holes in the draft or free agency.
Pause.
I was wondering if you're going to say anything. We're going to break everything down, where we go from here, extensions for Jalen Duren, Asar Townsend, what we're thinking about it all. So we're going to break all that down next week. Then I think with the week after, we're going to do a Lions schedule breakdown. You got to keep it together. We're going to do a Lions schedule breakdown, I think, the week after, do our annual predictions. And then we're jumping into NBA draft season. Literally my favorite. I was just telling you, Kyle, before that we started recording, my favorite time of the year is breaking down the NBA draft. It's just different than NFL draft. It's more special in my opinion, just because there's so many less guys. You can kind of know every single guy that's coming through. So NBA draft, we'll do who we think the Pistons should take, and then I believe the week after that we might have a live draft episode for you guys there. So just a peek behind the curtain. The next few weeks are going to be an absolute blast. So stay tuned for those. But wrapping up this show, Grid of the Week. As always, Grid of the Week is brought to you by Pins and Aces. It is 90 degrees here in Michigan. I know it's supposed to drop back down to 60s this week. That's Michigan weather. It's 90 one day, it's 60 the other. You got to have the right apparel when you're going out and golfing. The best place to go get your golf apparel is Pins and Aces, pinsandaces.com. It is the Colorado-based golf brand making premium polos and head covers. Our listeners can get a 21% off discount at checkout at pinsandaces.com. Use promo code GRIT for 21% off any product at pinsandaces.com. Grit of the Week. Kick us off.
Grit of the Week, man. It's always tough when, pretty much every team in Detroit is struggling.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you last time the Tigers won a game. Maybe they did sneak in a win in the past week, and I didn't see it. But I swear to God, every time I look, they're losing. So, obviously Pistons just got eliminated. I am going to go with, you know what? I'm going with a guy who earned a starting spot in these playoffs and earned it because he's been playing damn good basketball. I'm going with Grit of the Week, Dennis Jenkins. His games 5, 6, and 7. Granted, Game 7, maybe some of those points are coming in garbage time, but still, I don't care, man. You're a starter, 19 points in Game 5, 15 points in Game 6, 17 in Game 7. I just think that Dennis Jenkins, and really just as a whole, just how outstanding of a season he had, considering, started on a two-way contract, two-way player, making almost no money at all, and just comes in and he just is the spark plug. He is your basically secondary or third ball handler coming off the bench, which is still a very, very important position. Earns himself a contract, struggles after that contract. I think just the weight of it all probably sat on him in a little bit, and instead of just pouting or whatever, he digs himself out of that hole and just is a big-time contributor for these Pistons. So obviously, Grit of the Week, we're only looking at 1 week sample. His sample size in games 5, 6, and 7 was incredible. I just think as a whole, I'm so proud of Dennis Jenkins, and I hope he has a very long and fruitful career. But Grit of the Week, Dennis Jenkins.
He's so worthy of that. I also, you remind me, I also want to give a shout out to Paul Reed. I think Paul Reed is worthy of a Grit of the Week. Yeah. I think those two, and I didn't ask you this when we were going through the playoffs as a whole, just talking about overall MVP, you probably have to give it to Cade, but I think there's a legit world, and I'm only a quarter joking that a guy like Dennis Jenkins or Paul Reed could have won an MVP of this series, just because there was games that they absolutely kept us in games just as much as Cade did, just less flashy and just more chaotic. So they both absolutely deserving. You're giving it to actual Dennis Jenkins, so shout out to Dennis. I don't know exactly what your role is going to be here in Detroit next year. We'll get into that more next week. But just absolutely turning it on for the playoffs here, specifically for the last few games as he was moved into the starting lineup. Just as a side note, if you look at his starting lineup numbers, his starting lineup numbers are insane. Going back to when Cade was injured with his collapsed lung.
Oh yeah.
And Dennis had to step in. I think when he's in the starting lineup number, I think he's averaging around 18 points a game, which is crazy for a guy who started it on a two-way contract. So shout out to Dennis Jenkins. For me, I'm going to go a little bit bigger picture for my Grit of the Week for two reasons. One, well, let me just say, my Grit of the Week is going to go to Tom Gores. So bigger picture, Tom Gores. What's
Okay.
so funny?
No, nothing. I don't know why I'm laughing. I think I'm still laughing at the pause, honestly. Yeah.
Tom Gores, Grit of the Week, for first and foremost, for overall the Pistons. You mentioned obviously 60 wins for the first time in 20 years or something. It's not talked about enough how Tom Gores did what a lot of GMs and owners refuse to do, and that's put your pride aside, literally put your money aside, and admit when a mistake was made with the Monty Williams thing. He went out. The Monty Williams signing in general was surprising, and it was a great move. He went out and put the money on backed the truck up for Monty. Monty said no to come coaching here, and Tom Gores was like, how much is it going to cost to get you here? Because Monty was coming off a really good stint with the Suns, And so he put his money where his mouth was, and everyone's like, okay, here we go. Tom Gores is bought in. Like, that was a huge move. And then it was equally huge to realize, like, Monty doesn't want to be here. This is not working. It's going to cost us a shit ton of money to get rid of him, but it's the right move, so we're going to go ahead and do that. So to A, put it on the line for Monty, and then B, recognizing that, like, Monty is not the right decision. JB Bickerstaff's probably that guy. Let me literally pay to make this go away. That's a move that very few owners will do. So I want to shout out for that. And the other item, the more pressing item that's in my mind that, like, is the real reason why I want to give my grid of the week to Tom Gores. It was just announced last week that the Detroit Pistons next season, their games will be televised on cable TV.
Oh, yeah.
They are not going to be bouncing around from the different cables. They're not going to be blacked out. They are officially just going to be on cable TV. It's a move that Matt Ishbia did with the Suns, obviously a former Michigan State Spartan. I don't know if it's the same. I think Matt Ishbia, like, sold the games to a local team. I don't know the ins and outs and the details of how the Pistons are going to be on cable TV. All I know is that Tom Gores made it happen for a guy that has to allegedly, illegally stream pretty much every Pistons game, Tigers game, Red Wings game. Like, this is just so refreshing to not have to figure out, like, okay, can I stream the game from my phone onto the TV, or do I have to go online on my TV and is this on Peacock or is this on Hulu, wherever it is? I'm just so happy that Tom Gores is like, enough is enough. Games should be easy to watch. We want our town, our city, to watch and cheer for our guys. Just give them the easy TV. Put it on cable. So shout out to Tom Gores for making the Monty Williams call, for overseeing the regime, the rejuvenation for the Pistons, but then also for listening to the people, finally putting the games on cable TV. Hopefully Mike Ilitch follows suit. We'll have to wait and see on that. But Tom Gores, shout out him.
Hell yeah, dude. Absolutely, dude. I think I was giggling, just I don't really know why, but I didn't think you were going Tom Gores there, but absolutely, man. Putting our games on. The hardest thing, there's literally nothing harder than watching your sports team in the city that you live, and I have never been able to wrap my head around it. It doesn't make any goddamn sense. And so yeah, I think that's phenomenal. Like, you should just be able to turn your TV on if you live in that city and watch the sports in that city. And I'm really glad that Tom Gores is doing that. And yeah, shout out Tom Gores for getting rid of Monty Williams too. I think I was so snake bitten by the Tom Gores of old that, like, is just going to go all in for nothing, like, you know, bringing a Blake Griffin into town. But really, I think he has evolved a lot as an owner since then, and he's proven like he wants to go all in. And so again, we're going to break down potential moves, and there has been already some rumblings of guys that the Pistons could be targeting for next season, and you know, those are obviously just rumors right now. But yeah, I think this team could look dramatically different than it does right now in the best way possible. Maybe shipping off some young talent, maybe getting in guys that really fit the groove of this team and the spacing that the team needs. But we'll break it down. I am pumped though, and I just knowing that you have an owner that is willing to back the Brinks truck up and, you know, spend the money. You know, there's obviously a cap, but you have a president of basketball operations, Trajan Landon, who seems to have a good head on his shoulders. You got the owner who also doesn't really care. He's like, yep, spend, whatever. I think it's a good recipe if you have a good president, which we obviously do. So yeah, I'm pumped, man. I think sky's the limit for this team.
That's a great point, because I was the same way. Like, Tom Gores for years, and he's a former Michigan State Spartan, for years I thought he was one of the worst owners in sports, and rightfully so. He probably was one of the worst owners. But for some reason, the last 5 years since the terrible losing streak, and maybe even before that, because before that when we got Cade and all, like, he's just shown that he cares, and he's always at games, and so he's done a complete 180 in my mind.
Always wasted too.
I know.
I swear.
And at the time when we were terrible and he was one of the worst owners in sports, I was like, oh, this guy is always wasted. Now on the other side where he's so good, I'm all for him. I'm his biggest fan. I'm like, yeah, the guy just likes to have fun. So shout out to Tom Gores. I will say, I think I did see online that while the games will be on cable TV, YouTube TV still will not carry the channel. So I had to look into that. People were saying that's no big deal. You just go out and buy a $10 antenna and literally put an antenna on. Which still sucks. Like, YouTube TV, come on, like, why is there so many different companies that are just attempting to forcing us not to watch our sports? But I digress. So shout out to Danis Jenkins, a little tiny shout out to Paul Reed, and shout out to Tom Gores there. So okay, that's our show. Thank you guys for tuning into this week's episode. You can find both Kyle and I on Twitter at Kyle_Marino and myself at Dutton_Tyler. You can follow the podcast itself on Instagram and TikTok at Gridiron Report, or on Twitter at Gridiron Report 1. You can also watch these full-length episodes on YouTube at Gridiron Report. A little bit less edited on YouTube, so if you want the full kind of sort of live edits, you can go there. You can join the conversation next week by calling into the Gridiron Report voicemail for us to call and discuss on the podcast. That phone number is 313-306-7939. And finally, if you guys like this episode, please take a moment to rate it 5 stars. Give us a nice review saying you enjoyed it. Follow us on all forms of social media. Again, call into that voice line. Let us know what you think during our exit interview for the Pistons next week, how you think the season went, where you think the Detroit Pistons should go this offseason. Again, the week after that, we'll be breaking down the Lions' schedule, what you think the Lions' record's going to be. Call in, start talking football in that voicemail. We'll play that and discuss it on the podcast. Thank you guys for listening.
Thanks, y'all. Restore the roar.
City where the lights grow dim, grit and grind every inch, every rim, from the underdogs rising to the legends that win. It's the grit iron report, let the games begin. Every highlight's a journey, roads paved with fire, sweat, tears, and hustle that never expire. From the rookies on the rise to the old hands retire. Grit iron is the place for fans to conspire. Hustle on blast, beats thunder and loud. Champions are born from the roar of the crowd. The grit iron report where the stories are proud.